I like it. I enjoy it.
All right, let's go. By the way, I'm going to show you the picture of Winfield Scott when the war began. I just enjoy this one. Here are Southern politicians and Winfield Scott. And Scott already kind of showed his value. In January, when they were about ready to count the electoral votes in 1861 for Lincoln, secessionists were going to storm the Capitol and try to overturn the election in 1861. And Scott surrounded the Capitol with 1,000 men with bayonets. And the insurrection did not happen. There would not be another insurrection over the Electoral College until your lifetime, on January 6, 2021. An attempt to overturn an election. But that's another story. Scott had a similar thing back in January of 1861. Kind of fascinating. This is the plan. This is why they called it the Anacondas plan, that Richmond, Heartland, that question we just did in the video, Mississippi River blockade. A lot of people thought this was too slow. In fact, they mocked it as Scott's Great Snake. But this cartoon, Snake, slowly strangling the enemy, turned into the Anaconda plan. And I love this cartoon, the little caricatures. I'm not sure what they all meant, but they meant something back in 1861. But I love Alabama, and the guy just going, "Hi, I'm Alabama." So, McClellan took over command. Scott was not prepared for this, and so he kind of agreed, even though he's kind of shocked about McClellan. He had another man in mind. And McClellan, now all that fall, commanded the entire United States Army. And he did build a great army. He was an incredible organizer, but incredibly cautious. Scott was convinced that he was outnumbered. He was convinced that the Confederates had more troops in the field in Virginia. Now, was that possible? I mean, they would have to put virtually everybody there. Remember, the South only had about 5 million people. 5 million, and they had to be white. They could not arm slaves. Of that, less than 1 million fighting age. The North, the United States had significantly more men. But McClellan refused to believe. Refused. There is McClellan right there. McClellan giving a review. And his army would be called the Army of the Potomac. The United States named their armies after the nearest river. Eventually, there would be 100,000 men. I should add, attrition was pretty bad in camps. The disease, cholera, and other dysentery just ravaged soldiers in camp. And they didn't know where to put the latrines next to the water. More men died of disease than died in combat. And that would be the norm for the rest of the century. This is all 100,000 men. I like this picture a lot for lots of reasons. First off, you can see how they're equipped. These are all wool uniforms, light blue pants, navy blue top, keepy hat, based on the French. And yes, baseball had been invented, so they copied a baseball hat after this hat. And these are muzzle-loading muskets, cap lock. See the bayonet. Like the drummer boy. The boots. I should add sizes for boots and uniforms. Sizes for male clothing. At first, women would come very soon afterwards. Came out of the Civil War. You had to make massive numbers of uniform. They couldn't custom make it. And they just, at first, were just kind of making random sizes and hope for the best. And they decided they better standardize it. So they just kind of guessed, what is the average size man? They took that and made him medium. And that's where the sizes come from. Small, medium, large, extra large came from the Civil War. Women's sizes then almost right after, because they realized it was cheaper to standardize sizes and let people adapt. Maybe not fit him perfectly. Also, one more thing. Doesn't he look about 3'8"? And he has a great mustache. You got to give him that. So, this is Mac, also dubbed Little Mac, Little Napoleon. He was given overall command that fall and did nothing. And I love this. There's a couple cartoons. I love when he refused to move. First off, this is more like pro-McClellan. And this is showing like Lincoln and others as like geese squawking at him to move. McClellan won't be pushed. In fact, McClellan's going to take it as a badge of honor. I won't be pushed into a premature action because if I lose, the country is destroyed. And I'm outnumbered. Here is, I love the Confederates Confederates and the Union forces looking at each other across the Potomac. But my personal favorite is Lincoln, and it's like McClellan is a little baby in a baby carriage. Baby carriages were brand new, but pushing him towards Richmond, trying to begging him to go, and he won't go. So going in 1862, after the winter, Lincoln is literally pulling his hair out, trying to get McClellan to move. And so this is the strategy for both sides. The North. Now, the North is also the Union. Sometimes I'll call them the Federals, but they're the United States. The North is or was the United States. And they're still only fighting for Union, not slavery yet. And so their basic plan, get the blockade going, even take harbors that the Confederates can't use, but also take Richmond. Okay, Richmond's not as important as destroying the Confederate army in front of Richmond. Here's Richmond right here, and that's why all the battles were fought within walking distance of Washington, D.C. The South. Okay. They tried what's called King Cotton diplomacy, not selling cotton to the British. It failed miserably. So King Cotton diplomacy failed. So now their plan is hold out. Hold out. Remember the Revolutionary War, the United States did not need to win. The Continental Army just had to survive. The Confederates are in the same boat. They don't need to conquer the North. They just need to survive. And then hope Britain will intervene. Now, Britain saw themselves as the country against slavery, but as long as the war is about union, Britain could just claim to be peacemaker. But they were relatively pro-South. They saw the United States as an economic competitor, knock them down. So Britain is neutral, but the Confederates are trying to get them into the war. So we're going to do the Eastern Theater really quick. And the Eastern Theater. Now, in the way they talk about the Civil War, the Eastern Theater is this area around Richmond. The Western Theater is kind of every place else. So here's the East, here's the West. But when the Union armies of the West invade Georgia and go to the sea, it's still called the Western Theater, even though it's no longer the West anymore. The East, it's right here. One thing about this, all the battles being in the same area, if you want to visit them from Washington, D.C., it's relatively convenient. So here's Washington, D.C. Here's the railroad they took that would have connected Richmond this way. There wasn't a straight shot here yet. And so Bull Run is right there. McClellan is here. Now, he still won't move. Here's McClellan at that time. I just like this picture for one simple reason, the binoculars. Binoculars were seen as really cool. Binoculars were relatively new, and so you see a lot of generals holding binoculars because they could afford these expensive devices. You were like the cutting edge. So Lincoln, finally getting mad, fired McClellan from overall command and just said, you command the Army of the Potomac. And Lincoln took command of the Union Army. Now, Lincoln basically could not pick a general. He didn't know who to pick, didn't know what to do. So in desperation, he made himself commander. I will take over command as commander-in-chief and then delegate generals to do the job. This was an unmitigated disaster. Lincoln was very intelligent, but had no idea how to run an army. And he still was in the same boat. He had to convince McClellan to move. This will last for almost a year as Lincoln in command, until he finally realized what a disaster that was. The Confederate commander was probably one of the best defensive generals of the war, almost certainly the most beloved general on both sides of the war, Joseph E. Johnston, a Virginian. Beauregard and him both led at Bull Run. Davis hated Beauregard, and so kicked him back to Charleston. gave it to Johnston. Brilliant on defense, not very aggressive, really looked out for the men, widely respected. Yeah, Joseph E. Johnston. And that's the Confederate flag, the flag of the Confederacy. Now it's copying the Texas flag. They have stars for all the Confederate states. Most of the Confederate flags you'll see have stars for Kentucky and Maryland too, kind of hoping they would join, but they never joined. Now, from a distance, what does that flag look like? Doesn't it look just like the Stars and Stripes? And so Beauregard, before Davis removed him from command, actually sent him west, came up with a flag just for the Army. And it would use a very striking difference, have a diagonal cross, because that could be easily, from a distance, could be easily shown that it was Confederate forces. So the Confederate battle flag. So most people, when they call that the Confederate flag, that's not the Confederate flag. That's the Confederate battle flag, the flag of the Army. And you can definitely tell that's not the U.S. flag. And also, one more thing, you notice it's square. But in the 16th century, they did flags as rectangles, and that was for sea. You can see them on the long flags for ships. This shows, they started doing this in 1862. They were so short of material, AKA cloth, they had to do square flags instead of rectangles to save cloth. That's a pretty stark example of how short of material they were. But still foggy. Maybe the fog will never leave. Something's hidden in the fog. Okay. So, McClellan, not knowing how big Johnston's army was, but convinced that Johnston had many more men, which Lincoln's like, he can't have more men. And McClellan's like, you're an incompetent fool. And called them other names I can't say in class. It's kind of shocking what's going on. Yes. Hired one of these new things called a detective agency. They were known as the Pinkertons. So the Pinkerton agency, named after William Pinkerton, they were basically, they used them as guards on trains. He used them when he was head of the Illinois Central. They also were cutthroats and thugs to intimidate workers so they wouldn't start a union and ask for higher wages. And they were basically just a bunch of thugs. A few of them were detectives. Now remember, police forces were brand new. And so companies would hire these detectives as guards, but also to infiltrate and destroy labor unions so they don't ask for higher wages. Here's Pinkerton right here. McClellan hired them to spy behind Confederate lines. Because he thought, oh, I've worked with them before, they'll be perfect. And so the Pinkertons went down south. Almost all these guys from Chicago all of a sudden went to Northern Virginia to ride around as spies, risking execution, to gather intelligence on the Confederacy. First thing, that's their sign, the Pinkerton National Detective Agency. We never sleep, so we're effective guards. What slang for a private detective came out of that sign? You ever heard private eye? Came out of that. I for the eye. Next. These guys had no idea what they're doing. They tramped around Northern Virginia with their more northern accents saying, where's the Confederate Army? And everyone knew they were a bunch of spies. And so what did the Confederates realize? Oh, we got a bunch of yahoos from the north asking about us. So what did they say? Yeah, we got thousands of men coming every day. We don't know where to put them. We're going to invade Washington, D.C. tomorrow. We're going to destroy the Union. Clearly not true. But they went back to McClellan and told McClellan they have 200,000 troops and more coming every day. They had about 50,000. McClellan bought it hook, line, and sinker. Bought the whole thing and was convinced he was outnumbered, he had proof, and Lincoln was potentially a traitor. He was pushing him to attack and destroy his army so the United States is destroyed. So, we're going to jump right to this. Going into the spring, the Confederate Army was right here, entrenched on the Potomac. Here's McClellan. Lincoln's begging him to attack. He finally came up with an elaborate plan. Before he could carry it out, Johnston pulled back to Fredericksburg. Why? There's nothing to eat up there. They had no supplies. The Confederates have just terrible supply situation. Pulled back. And so Union forces entered their entrenchments. They had these long line of entrenchments, bristling with cannon and gun, looking like it was going to be like a massive fort. When Union forces took it, this is what they found in the Confederate defenses. Do you see what the cannon were? Yeah, tree trunks painted black to look like cannon. Here is a Union soldier acting like he's firing one of them. They call them, and this one's kind of funny, Quaker guns, meaning that Quakers were pacifists and they can't fire. Now, what does this tell you if they're using fake guns along the Potomac? What does it tell you? Yeah, there are not very many men. What did it tell McClellan? It's a trap to suck him into a premature trap, a premature attack and destroy his army. This proved to McClellan that the Confederates have even more men than he thought. I'm not kidding when I say Lincoln is like, why aren't you attacking? He finally ordered him to attack, and he came up with actually a really good plan. It's eventually going to be called the Peninsular Campaign. And the Peninsular Campaign was this. Here's Johnston. Have some men act like they're going to attack, about 30,000 in McDowell, the same general lost at Bull Run. But use the Navy to go to here, advance up the James Peninsula, take Richmond. Up the James Peninsula, that's the Peninsular Campaign. It's a really good strategy. Now you might be wondering, why is this important? The war is still about Union. If this could have worked and knocked out Johnston's army, the war could have potentially ended before the issue of slavery was dealt with. And who knows how our history would be different. I could just predict one thing. There would have been a President McClellan. And there almost was. So he landed here, and it seemed to work. Johnston was totally fooled and would hesitate a month and a half. All McClellan had to do is move quickly. But before he could attack, the Confederates had been working on a secret weapon. A ship called the Virginia, but everyone called it under its old Navy name, the Monitor. I'm sorry, the Merrimack. And a naval battle between two ships called the Merrimack and the Monitor would forever change war. So the Merrimack, aka Virginia, was an ironclad. The Confederates took the hull of a Union ship they captured and put iron plates over it and made this triangular shape so any cannonball would ricochet off, and put 12 guns, 6 on either side, well, 5 on either side and 2 in the one in the bow, 1 in the stern. Slow moving, leaked, engine wasn't strong enough, but no cannonball could penetrate. The Union spies had told the Union forces, and they built the Monitor. Here's a painting of the Monitor. Low in the water, it had a turret that could be turned with 2 big guns on it, iron made. Weak engine, leaked water, but these two would fight. In fact, the Merrimack came out and sunk 2 Union ships, basically without even being hurt. But the Monitor arrived the next day, and they fought that march. Now, the battle turned out to be a draw. Neither side, the cannonballs couldn't penetrate. Both sides started leaking water, especially the Merrimack. When the day ended, the Merrimack retreated back to the harbor, never came out again. Every ship in every Navy after this was obsolete. Every single ship in every Navy was obsolete. And it showed one very important thing. Industry and technology would now be the most decisive factor in war. If you can build products and organize machinery, weapons, and have the technology, tactics aren't that important anymore. It's weapons. Who can build the most? And if a country had not begun the Industrial Revolution, they are going to be forever behind. There's a reason why Britain is going to conquer, and then France also, and other European countries, much of the rest of the world. Why? It happened almost all after the 1860s. They had the technology, they had the industry, they had the machines. The United States did not help win World War II by its superior tactics or manpower even. It was, we built more tanks, more planes, more ships than anybody else. That's how we won. It's the factories. And this would forever change war. Forever. By the way, the Monitor was going down to North Carolina and it got caught in the storm. And can you imagine what happened with this ship in the storm? It sunk, losing all hands. They found it in 2013. Some divers found the Monitor. It's down. So I know you were saying, well, I don't really understand the battle. I thought this easy follow map would show you exactly what happened.
It's got numbers.
Yeah, thank goodness. Numbers and arrows. So Union forces landed here. There was virtually nothing on the James Peninsula, but McClellan is McClellan. All he had to do is move fast. Instead, he moved slowly up the peninsula. And he got to Yorktown, right here. The Confederate, where they had slaves, dig trenches across there. Previously, they dug 10-foot deep trenches. Actually, from the Yorktown battlefield with the Revolutionary War, the big battle there, the trenches stretched from there to Jamestown, the first colony. That's why this whole area is a national park. The trenches are still there. They're not 10 feet deep anymore, but all of them are there. It's a pretty cool place. If you get a chance, go there. And at Yorktown, there was a Confederate general with about 10,000 men, not a great general, but he was an actor. And he understood how to fool Union forces for a month. McClellan believed he's outnumbered, and Magruder helped him. They did this elaborate ruse to make McClellan believe he had thousands of men. They were like in the trenches, they would yell fake orders to men. They had a train locomotive pull into Yorktown, blow off steam, and then yell fake orders to fake men getting off of fake trains, cars. Then back up the train, do it again. McClellan bought it completely. My favorite is he had men march behind holding poles when they're the bar crossed, and they nailed old rifles with bayonets. So they had a whole line of bayonets. And they had one man carry this. And it looked like a whole line of men marching back and forth on the trenches. McClellan wasted almost a month there, putting in heavy artillery. This is actually Union forces playing poker behind the line because they're not attacking. And by wasting a month, that allowed Johnston to get south. One more thing. They used the first aerial reconnaissance. They tried a balloon, the Intrepid. And this captured the popular imagination. It was a really good idea. But do you know the problem with using a balloon? Yeah, if they get a hole in it, they land really fast. They tried to shoot a telegraph line, they tried this whole thing. It was a good idea, but all through the war, you're going to see a picture of a balloon. But it only was used a few times. Okay, tomorrow, DBQ. If you have any questions, I will check Teams. Well, maybe. I'll check Teams. Oh, almost forgot, everybody. So some of you might be done early. Bring your textbook. Goodbye. Bring your textbook. Huh? Yeah, I'm going to sign for 682 chapter 50. If I wait for Thursday, I'll make it for Friday. And perhaps, but I'm going to send it. You're welcome. I sent it to the coffee shop and they divided the coffee. I'll get back to you. You guys are early.
Oh, is this for what I got tomorrow?
Huh?
I have no idea what this is.
It just, I don't know what it is either.
I'm like,
I feel like you're calling the back.
You didn't live in the States.
Hey, don't. I faced me how to be
Finish and get it on Thursday. Where are you going to be? Oh, yeah. So you'll do it on Thursday, okay?
did we have to label the states? Just like the United States and that. at the States. Oh, I need to do that part.
What caused this decision? My three cards. Yeah, I know. I don't think it's a car wasn't happening.
Yeah, sentence within the body. It'll be within your parallel.
It's also training small edge.
Hi.
If I fail, it's alright.
I'm trying to find.